I'm Rabbi Sam Blumberg. I'm the rabbi here at Temple Beth Am, and we are so delighted to host this evening of memory and of sharing as part of our LIZKOR to Remember program. I'm going to bring Ellie up in just a moment. I was thinking about this week's Torah portion. This week, Jewish communities all around the world are going to be reading the Torah portion called Vayakel from the book of Exodus, which talks about the various ways in which we bring gifts to our communities. Those gifts can be donations, right? Material donations. Those gifts can be money. But in this Torah portion, the gifts can also be skills and talents and bringing our whole selves to our communities. We have embarked now for 3 years on this program of LIZKOR to Remember, where we are bringing stories of our community members as they relate to World War II and the Shoah, the Holocaust. And we are trying to give to our Temple Beth Am community and to the greater Framingham community the gift of memory. And we're so, so grateful to all who have shared their stories and who will continue to share their stories. And I am so delighted to bring up Ellie Anbinder, who has really been the champion of this program for the very beginning, recognizing the great and urgent importance of preserving stories and preserving them now. So Ellie's going to introduce Nicole and Adam tonight.
First of all, let me thank all of you for coming tonight. We're delighted, and we have not only a full auditorium here, but we have almost 55 people on Zoom. So this is very, very exciting and very important. I want to take 1 minute to thank the LIZKOR committee. You all know that it takes a village to put something like this together, and so I'm just a pretty face up here. I also want to thank Bill Rabkin, head of the tech team, and Howie. Thank you very much. We are recording, and there will be a video available on YouTube in a few weeks, but this will be available. So anybody who wasn't able to come in person or was busy tonight, you'll still be able to see the whole presentation. So I would like to say to you that, as we progress through the many stories of the Holocaust with members of our own Temple Beth Am community who lived through it, it always reminds me of what happens when you take a rock and you throw it in a lake and you see the ripples. The ripples of the Holocaust included not only all of the 6 million that we lost, but impact so many other families, immediate families, the future extended families that never got the opportunity, and of course the armies fighting the war. So it is with great pleasure that tonight we present Adam and Nicole. We're going to talk about one such story, the story of Nicole's grandfather, who was a POW. And so I would like to turn the microphone, now that it's well adjusted, over to Adam, who will take us on the journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ellie and Rabbi, and to the committee for hosting us tonight. I'm so pleased to introduce my wife, Nicole, but before I get into that, she wanted me to help set the stage and again, some additional thank yous and recognitions. This is a wonderful cross-section of Temple members and people from the Framingham community, and some of my colleagues on the school committee are here in the room and on Zoom, and the superintendent, and someone who I'm so pleased spent the time to come out here tonight, one of my bosses at work, the commander of Hanscom Air Force Base, Colonel Taona Enriquez. We're going to hear from her at the end of the program because she has a strong connection to the Air Force historian and has strengthened this presentation, and I'm so pleased to have her here as well, and to the family as well in the front row here and on Zoom. We have someone watching from Hawaii. We have people from all over the coasts. So let me first introduce this wonderful family that I am lucky to have been married into, the Fine and Sweet family. So Hy and Eve, we are going to soon hear from Hy and Eve. They were interviewed in 2010 as part of a family oral history project. Hy and Eve had 3 kids, Carl, Norman, and Nancy. and 2 grandkids, Nicole as well as Max. And so I married Nicole, Nancy's daughter, back 14 years ago now. And so I got to know High and Fine and learned some of their story when I first met them at Passover dinner in 2003. But I didn't learn very much. They didn't talk about it much. It wasn't until someone wrote a book about POWs during the era and High Fine was featured. We'll get to this book later. That I really started getting interested in the rest of the family too. And we decided to do a family interview, which ended up being a 2-hour project in 2010. A close group of family members asked them questions and listened to their experiences. Tonight, you're going to hear a series of short clips from this interview. We're going to put about 20 minutes spread out for you to see that Nicole will be introducing. They were married for 67 years when this interview occurred, as they described their POW experience. Tonight, in addition to the Air Force historian at the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center, Kevin Rusnak, who we are grateful for, as well as the Boston Globe, Boston Herald, this book, and some primary sources, including some we have on display to show you later tonight. All of that came together as we are quoting them and sharing their work to help share this story. You will soon learn from High and Eve's granddaughter, Nicole, about who they are as the grandparents she knew, but also about how they became the people that they were. The story is just as much about Eve as it was with High. When someone deploys, their family serves in their own way as well. Eve's experiences as a military spouse are so meaningful too. So first, let's get into it. Let me show you a preview of High and Eve in their own words, and then I'll introduce Nicole to tell their story. So again, as I mentioned, they were married for 66 years at the time of this video. They had about 5 more years together before High died in 2015 and Eve in 2016. Eve was the daughter of an Orthodox rabbi. High grew up in Roxbury, born in 1920, where his parents settled after leaving Russia to escape anti-Semitic attacks. Their Roxbury neighbors included Irish and Italian immigrants. High said, quote, "We got along. We didn't ask each other our religions," end quote. We mixed. Mr. Fine's father owned a small shoe factory and gave him a Buick when he began college as a BU freshman after graduating high school in 1938. His father was a shoe manufacturer and ran a shoe factory first in Chelsea. Then the business moved to Framingham in the mid-1930s before moving to Boston. The Navy needed the space in Framingham and the factory was forced to move from here. It's called the American Shoe Company and then later Hamilton Shoe. When Pearl Harbor was attacked in his senior year at BU, High went to the draft board and received approval to first finish his last semester to complete a degree in business and then to go join the U.S. Army Air Corps, also called the U.S. Army Air Forces, after graduation in August of 1942. Soon you will hear about how he met Eve, got married a month after he joined the Air Corps, and soon had their first baby on the way. You'll learn how he was deployed to Europe, flew multiple missions, and eventually, after being shot at, was shot down in Germany in 1944. Taken POW. They didn't know he was Jewish. Let me show you a clip first of how Eve learned he was missing.
Was shot down.
Wasn't it dated on your anniversary?
Yeah, Dad was shot down on our first wedding anniversary, and that was a double stuck to me. It was bad enough he was shot down. So he was shot down.
Can you read it for us?
Yeah, why don't you read it?
He was shot down, missing in action. Okay. The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret that your husband, Second Lieutenant Hyman Fine, has been reported missing in action since 12 September over Germany. If further details or other information are received, you will be promptly notified.
And then a preview of High explaining how he kept that he was Jewish from his captors.
I didn't answer anything. I gave him my name, rank, and serial number. That was it.
Now I'm pleased to introduce my wife, the real speaker you're here to hear from tonight. I'm very excited to hear her tell her grandparents' story.
Hi. Hi, everybody on Zoom. Thanks for coming. So, public speaking is not my thing, but I am doing this for 2 main reasons. The first is to keep my grandparents' story alive, to learn from history and respect the experiences people of their generation went through. The second reason is because I lost my mom last April, and she was so happy and proud that I was honoring her dad and telling his story that I couldn't not do this. So we were hoping to do it last year, but unfortunately we couldn't. So we wanted her to see it. Unfortunately, she passed before then. So I'm happy to be here today. Bittersweet that she is not. To me, they were just my grandparents. I called them Bubby and Papa. So kind, so loving. My grandfather never talked about his time in the war. This interview was the first time I heard 95% of their stories and experiences. I had no idea the type of stress they went through together during World War II and beyond. I am so grateful that we did this interview, and I'm so excited to share parts of it with you today. I have a tendency to talk quickly, very, very quickly. My grandfather would remind me very often to slow down my speech because I would talk so fast that he couldn't understand a word I was saying. I'm going to do my very best to honor him today and go as slow as I can. I apologize if I speed up. Just tell me that I'm going really fast if you can't understand me. Okay, let's go. So let's go way back where it all started, to where their love story first began. Let's set the scene, shall we? A restaurant, a double date, except they were both on dates with different people. Let's hear about it. Let's talk about when you met her. Oh.
I'm trying to think. I had met her in 1942 while I was waiting to be called. A friend of mine called me up and said, "I got a girlfriend I want to take out, but you got a cousin coming here to New York. I'd like to have you take her out with us." I told him I wasn't interested, and that was it. But he called me 2 times. I think he even called me 3 times, because the girl wouldn't go with him unless his cousin was taken care of. And I said, okay. So I go up there at about 7:30, and we're sitting down waiting. I said, what are we waiting for? So the guy from Winthrop has got a date with the rabbi's daughter. So, okay.
Wait for the day.
So at 9 o'clock, she comes in.
You're waiting for Shabbos to be over.
Yeah. So the ninth,
9 o'clock?
9 o'clock came on. She comes walking in, and I took a look at her. It didn't look so bad. She had a hair that was all the way down her back, and she was real sharp, real smart. And we went out, and I didn't pay attention to the girl. I was just being accommodating, so to speak.
The woman that you
And I was talking to her. I was playing with her hair. I was sitting in the back of her. And then when we got out of the car, I said to her, "We mind if I call you up and go?" I said, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure." And even though she was dating this guy, she said, "Yeah." And that's how it worked out.
About a year after they met, they got married. He rushed back during furlough from flight training in Jackson, Mississippi, and her father, the Orthodox rabbi, officiated their wedding.
That's when we got married.
That's right. That's when you came home, and I said we should get married.
Yeah, I said no. Let's wait. First time I asked you, you said no. The second time you asked me, and I said no. But then you persuaded me. Anyways, her father married us, the rabbi.
On a furlough?
In 1 week, my father sent out invitations, hired a band, took care of everything, and in his synagogue, his show, we got married on a Sunday afternoon. Everybody came.
After the wedding, his next training stop was in Florida, and my grandmother joined him. This is a really big deal, as she grew up pretty sheltered. As the rabbi's daughter, she had never even been to a restaurant, didn't know how to cook. She desperately wanted a baby in case he never came back. She got pregnant during those first few months before he deployed. While she was planning their family's future, he was learning how to navigate an airplane. My grandfather had some trouble flying as a pilot, so he was redirected to Navigator School in Alabama, and then they moved to Boise, Idaho. It was then that he was deployed as part of the 491st Bomber Group, first to Greenland, then to England, and my grandmother, pregnant, moved back home to live with her parents at that time. He flew in a B-24 called Pappy's Persuader, participating in multiple missions. The 491st Bomber Group performed many important missions. It also lost 148 aircrafts in only 6 days in late 1943. It was a very rough and stressful situation for my grandfather. On July 25th, 1944, while participating in Operation Cobra, supporting Allied troops, he was shot at, but not yet shot down. This experience, he said, shaped what was to come. This mission helped them escape the Normandy Peninsula and move forward to defend Paris. According to the Air Force's chief historian, this was all directed at transportation targets such as railroads, fuel depots, and bridges to hinder the German army from bringing in reinforcements to the battlefront in France. My grandfather recalls flying low at 5,000 feet, the anti-aircraft artillery, also known as flak, from German anti-aircraft guns so heavy that he was sure the plane was going to be shot down. He said, after that, nothing scared me. On August 6, 1944, my grandmother gave birth to their first child, Carl, back in Massachusetts. At the same time, as a flight navigator in Europe, my grandfather was flying whenever possible, even when he felt sick, so he could complete enough missions to be sent home. 31 total missions, and he could go home. This mission rule was enacted to provide psychological relief to the airmen who were suffering the worst attrition rate of the war. He was ready to fly as often as he could so he could meet that magic number and go home. He said the news about Carl's birth had spurred him to fly, even when he was sick, anything to make that mission limit. On September 12, 1944, their first wedding anniversary, a little over 5 weeks after Carl was born, he was a second lieutenant flying his 23rd mission when his B-24 Liberator was shot down over Misburg, Germany, with only 8 missions left to get home. At 7:30 a.m. that September day, my grandfather and his plane started their mission against an oil storage depot in Misburg, Germany, in the north-central part of the country. At approximately 11:28 a.m., Pappy's Persuader, tail number 44-40144, pictured here, piloted by Second Lieutenant Robert Eckerd and navigated by my grandfather, was hit and badly damaged by flak. Their number 2 and 3 engines were seen smoking, and the aircraft dropped out of the sky. He bailed out over the beautiful German countryside with the rest of the crew and spent the rest of World War II as a prisoner of war at a camp called Stalag Luft 1 in a town along the Baltic Sea. Everything became miserable after that.
My 23rd mission,
Over the town of
Misburg.
Misburg.
That's a German town that was making synthetic oil.
Where was it near? What major town?
I can't think of the name of the town right now, but it's now near a big town. Misburg, Mizburg. And during one of my lectures, he said, if you ever get shot down and you bail out, they'll try and come down as close to the ground you can and pull your cord, and maybe you won't get spotted and nobody will see you. And when I jumped out of the plane, didn't jump down, I sat down on camera hatch and I rolled out. I started coming down on my back, and I take a look over my shoulder, and I can see the leaves in the trees. I yanked my earthquake. The chute opened up, and I thought I broke my back. My feet slammed right down, but everything was okay. But that's I didn't realize we were close to the ground as we were. When we got hit.
It's good thing you looked.
When we got hit up at 28,000 feet, we lost 2 engines. And when you get those 2 engines up in that altitude, the other 2 engines can't carry too much, and the plane just simply dropped right down. But we got it down to thicker altitude. He was able to control the plane, and he told the enlistment to bail out. And we were able to fly. He was able to fly that plane for another 5 or 10 minutes. I thought, yes. He called down and said, "Where are we?" He said, "I'm right in the middle of Germany. How about Sweden?" "You can't get to Sweden. You can't get to Switzerland. Go west. Maybe we'll get behind Patton's lines," because Patton was running all over the place at that time during the war. And it wasn't shortly after that the other 2 engines just started faltering, and we just bailed out.
How many people were on the plane?
We had 10.
And how many survived?
We all survived.
After they were shot down, they were almost immediately captured. It then took a couple of days for the German soldiers to move them to a camp. They slept on benches outside the first couple of nights. Then they went to the prisoner of war camp where interrogation began. My grandfather and his crew were lucky in that sense. Just a few weeks earlier, 6 members of a crew from the same bomber unit that had crash-landed safely were beaten to death on the ground by German civilians. Being captured by the German military in comparison to the German civilians, in this case, was preferred.
Went into over Rousseau. I got interrogated twice. No problem. They asked me questions. I wouldn't answer a thing. I would never open my mouth up. I had a problem because being Jewish and being German, they don't mix too well. So I didn't want to start with them. And they asked me what I am. I probably would have said nothing. I wouldn't answer a question at all.
Did they ask you your religion? You said no religion?
No, I did not say nothing. He said no religion. Yeah, he said none of my head. And the worst part was to come.
While the worst part was yet to come. Initially, before the SS took over the camp, life was not so awful at Stalag Luft 1. They had chocolate and spam from Red Cross packages. They played volleyball and bridge, had access to send mail, and gave each other haircuts to pass the time. The POW camp, which eventually held 7,717 American POWs and around 1,400 British POWs during the entire war, was located right outside the city, with a view of the large Lutheran church 2 miles from the camp gates visible to the POWs. In comparison, he was a prisoner just miles from the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, where at least 35,000 people died of brutal mistreatment, disease, and gruesome medical experimentation. As you just heard, my grandfather was not moved to the Jewish ghetto at Stalag Luft 1. This was because he simply stood there silent, nodded his head, and hid his American tags. Those tags were stamped with a big H for Hebrew and hid beneath a board in his bunk. He only wore his new German POW dog tags labeled Prisoner 5677. Meanwhile, back in Massachusetts, my grandmother received a Western Union telegram saying he was missing in action. It was a really tough time. 3 months she had to wait until the second telegram arrived saying that he was in a prisoner of war camp. They wrote each other every day. She got all of his letters. Out of the 300 letters she wrote him, he only got 3. Towards the end of this clip, you'll hear one of my favorite parts of their whole story.
And September was the holidays, and I get a telegram from Uncle Nady was home. This is the telegram that I got from the Red Cross telling me that Dad was shot down.
See if we can print.
Yeah.
Was it dated on your anniversary?
Yeah, Dad was shot down on our first wedding anniversary, and that was a double shock to me. It was bad enough he was shot down. So he was shot down.
Can you read it for us?
Yeah, why don't you read it?
He was shot down, missing in action. Okay. The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret that your husband, Second Lieutenant Hyman Fine, has been reported missing in action since 12 September over Germany. If further details or other information are received, you will be promptly notified. This is by the Adjutant General.
And this was how many days before you got this?
I'm not sure. I'm really not.
Was it a week or two later?
That I got after he was, it was very close. They let you know right away. It was right, Central Lutheran Street in Dorchester, where I live with Bobby and Zadie.
Here's the next one.
And so he was missing until this is much later.
What's the date on that?
November 26th.
November 30th.
30th.
November 30th, so he was missing almost 3 months. The report just received through the International Red Cross. Red Cross states that your husband, Second Lieutenant Hyman Fine, is a prisoner of war of the German government. Letter of information follows from the Provost Marshal General.
That's the
The acting Adjutant General. So, all this time we really didn't know, and I had to be very careful because his mother and father kept saying, how come they didn't get a letter? How come they didn't get a letter? Because he always used to write to his mother the way he wrote to me.
You didn't tell them?
No, I didn't tell him, not right away, because that same day that I got a telegram that he was missing in action, Zadie had an operation. He had cancer in his throat. So it was a terrible situation all the way around between his being so ill and hearing the news. And I'm afraid to tell my mother-in-law, but little by little I had to eventually. Within a week or two, it got to be impossible, because she couldn't understand. And so I told her, and that was a very difficult time. I mean, there was very upsetting news for them and upsetting news to all of us.
So for 3 months, you didn't know
So
where
for 3 months,
he
I
was.
really didn't know.
You thought he could have been dead.
Then
You
when
didn't know.
I got the telegram that he was prisoner of war, my God, we all got busy. Everybody, I had to call our relatives, everybody. Meanwhile, in my father's shul, during the time he was missing in action, there was another Lieutenant Fine from Mattapan. And he comes home one day and he couldn't look me in the eyes. And I says, what's the matter? Something's wrong? He says, no, he couldn't. Finally, he said to me, he heard that a Lieutenant Fine from Mattapan was killed. This was while he was still missing, so nobody knew that he was all right. So he was very upset. So, I said, if he was killed, they would have let me know. So thank God that went over.
When they delivered, who delivers the telegram? Just to,
The,
Did you come in
Western
like a-
Union.
they would just come
Western
in.
Union came up to the house, rang the bell, and Uncle Nady was living at
Didn't have
at that, and he got the telegram, and he started to read, and he stopped. But I already heard enough. I says, "Don't stop. You might as well finish reading it," because I think I was feeding the baby at that time, and it was rough. It was hard. But eventually, I started to get letters from him. When I started to get letters from him, I had an address, and I could write to him. So I wrote him every single day. And when Carl was, I think, about 3 months old, I don't have a picture here, I had pictures taken, and I sent him a picture. All the time he was a POW, he only got 3 letters from me. And in one of the letters was the picture. I mean, it was just eerie, because I every day I wrote him a letter and sent it out. And he only got 3
We
letters.
don't know where they.
But I got his letters. I got all of his letters.
That's my favorite part, that we got the letter with the picture. Okay, now it's not so nice. Okay, so as the harsh winter turned into 1945, the SS cut rations and very little coal was distributed for heat. It was the coldest weather to hit Europe in decades. German power lines were torn down, and the camp's electricity was out for over a month. Access to water was on and off. They went months with barely any food. The German army truly starved them. They were so weak they could barely talk to each other. He got very, very sick, but thankfully he survived with the help of his friends.
Then when the Gestapo came, when the when they called came in, Gestapos came in, they cut off the fuel, they cut off the food, and we were from January, February, March to the early part of April without anything. And I took deathly sick. And I was laying on bed shivering. They would throw blankets on top of me. The only time I got out of the bed for, I guess, a week or 10 days, I can't remember. I think I was.
We had pneumonia.
I think I had pneumonia. And for roll calls, a couple of guys would carry me outside, under the arm. And we go through the roll call bit and come back in. I'd get into bed and throw all those blankets on me. There was no medication. There was nothing. But I survived it.
Everybody
And
helped each
the only
other.
reason why I survived
You had water.
it,
You had water?
because I was in very good health. They worked us out pretty good. Otherwise,
Conditions continued to deteriorate, and rumors spread that Hitler wanted a total liquidation of all Jews and POWs. My grandfather said the SS were rough customers and he avoided them like the plague. At the same time in history, in March of that year, 20 miles down the road, Anne Frank and her sister Margot died of typhus.
when the Germans came in, the SS came in. I said, "Ruma, SS came in." They went to the files. All the Jewish boys, they put them into
Including you?
No, I never told them I was Jewish.
But wasn't it on
When
your?
you see, if I can find it, it says my name, religion blank. I wouldn't tell them. I didn't
So your
say.
dog tag didn't say it?
I want to tell you something. He knew exactly who I was, where I came from, and everything else. I wasn't. If he wanted to get some stuff out of me, he could have been tough, but he knew, and I only answered. I didn't answer anything. I gave him my name, rank, and serial number. That was it. Yeah.
Why didn't the other Jews do that?
I don't know. That's one of those things. Some of these guys too proud of us to say no.
But they survived.
They did. Yeah.
Luckily,
Luckily,
because they were orders out to shoot them all, to kill them all.
I can't even talk straight now. They were ordered to by Hitler to liquidate all Jews, and including Jewish choice too.
All the prisoners.
American Jews.
Yeah, POWs. And if they did that, I wasn't going to be with them. So that's all. The only thing I care for is survival. Here I am sitting over in Germany with a wife and kid, and even though she's getting money from me, but whatever it was, but it was survival.
Russian troops liberated Stalag Luft 1 on May 12, 1945. A detachment from the American LIZKOR arrived soon after. The SS camp commander and guards opted to flee rather than move the prisoners to other areas or to execute them en masse. They left the POWs alone, and my grandfather and the other prisoners waited and waited because departing the gated area was deemed too dangerous. Liberation came at the right time for my grandfather. By the time he was liberated, he was about 60 pounds lighter from lack of food. Between January and May 1945, his weight fell from 170 to 115 pounds.
I knew that the war wasn't going to be over in December, and Christmas time, and it came January, and it wasn't over. February, it wasn't over. March, April, finally in May, around May 15th, they capitulated.
So did the Germans just pack up and leave?
Huh?
Did the Germans just pack up and leave you all there?
The guards, yeah.
They just left you
Well, so
behind.
otherwise they would have got killed.
So who came in and freed you?
Russians.
The Russians came in, and then the Russians left us, and we took care of ourselves.
And then,
We waited for the Air Force.
My grandmother got a telegram letting her know the great news. First one stating he was back under control of the United States government, and the second one that she'll read to you.
the Chief of Staff of the Army directs to inform you, your husband, Lieutenant Fine, is being returned to the United States. Within the near future, he will be given an opportunity to communicate with you upon arrival, which he did.
We have all of those telegrams over here if you want to take a look at them after. She waited for his return at her sister's place in New York City. My grandfather said he cried when he saw the Statue of Liberty. My grandmother said she remembers watching through a window as a cab pulled up, and he got out and looked at her through the glass. He then met his son Carl for the first time. The return was exciting, but as you can imagine, also not easy. My grandfather once mentioned he could never eat mashed potatoes again after being fed them so often in the POW camp. It was one thing that my grandmother never made. Soon after his return, he found himself getting angry easily. Nightmares, body aches. He said that he was in tough shape, but he didn't realize it at the time. He said he blocked out the memories, training himself simply not to think about it from the 1950s to the 1980s. Then in the 1980s, it all rushed back. He started talking to other POWs, which he said helped with the stress, as their collective experience and sympathy helped. My family said it well to a Boston Globe reporter who wrote my grandfather's obituary. I'm going to share 2 quotes. My Uncle Normie said, quote, "My father's life was going extremely sweet before the war, and after the war, it was a hard, heavy burden to carry." End quote. My mom, Nancy, said to the same reporter that they were a loving family, adding that her dad's war experiences were never discussed, even after he started meeting with other veterans in the early 1980s to talk about what they had endured and the years of nightmares. She said, quote, "We were shielded from it. He didn't bring it home to us." End quote.
So how were you when you got liberated? How was your psychological state of being?
I thought I was pretty normal, but I look back at it, and I wasn't too...
Post-traumatic?
Not as good as he thought he was.
not as good with temper-wise or mentally-wise. It took a while to suffer, not suffer, to
Come out of it.
come
Did
out
you
of it.
notice?
Because they didn't work with you
He was
guys.
very short-tempered, yeah.
Oh,
They didn't help you out.
no, not at that time. They couldn't. Look at all the guys that are coming home at one time. Yeah, we had 110,000 in there, about 130,000 who were in that camp and were taken prisoner, and about 105 came home.
And it's just one camp.
No, that's off the one country. Our camp was 10,000.
Oh.
So they didn't deal with PTS, that's what it is?
PTSD,
They didn't have
post-traumatic
it. They didn't have it at that time.
They didn't know?
Did he have bad nights, bad dreams? Mom?
He just was really very short-tempered.
How long did that last?
It didn't take as long.
It's still going on.
I tried to cope with it the best I
Came
could.
back. It's play to him.
But you never talked about your experience. You kept that pretty much to yourself.
Yeah, he never wanted to talk about
I
it.
go around. So I was just telling people about you bail out. How many times? I said I bailed out twice.
Bailed out once.
And the first and last time.
Yeah. He never really wanted to talk about it. And it does, even to this day, can bring back bad memories.
No, tough memories. They're not bad. I made it, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you eventually started talking about it in the groups that you
Yeah, well, yeah, to an extent.
You get together with all our
Nobody
friends.
that I know went through what I went through.
Yeah.
Except
They were all in
Bim.
service.
You know, if you remember Bim,
Yeah.
he was wounded twice in a field.
Mhm.
And the first time they sent him back to London, patched him up, he came back out and got wounded again. He got a shrapnel wound. He lost the use of 2 fingers, and but he went through. He had troubles. He could fly off the handle very quickly.
But he didn't
And
say
maybe
that.
I try to control myself. It's even now sometimes it gets. If I get rubbed the wrong way, sometimes I lose my temper.
And you think it was from that experience?
I think it all adds up. All adds up.
Suppressing all that information?
Well, it's not. I don't know
Keeping
what
it
you want to
inside?
call. I really don't know. I don't know. I think I'm pretty much 99% normal, but at 1% once in a while I get riled up.
Her face makes me laugh. Their story is real, but truly like a movie.
It was tough times.
Did
When I look back now, I just can't. It doesn't seem real, you know. It's
like a movie?
Like a movie. So many years ago. First of all, you're talking a lot of years ago, and it just so much happened. And when you stop and think, now you don't think anything of it. But when you really want to think about it, you went through very tough times, very hard times.
This all happened in a period of 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years, and look what was squeezed into 2.5, 3 years.
These pictures show you how their life went on after his return. He thankfully made it home when so many others who served in World War II did not. My grandfather started a veteran's post once back home, and he worked at his father's shoe factory in Boston, making shoes for the Army and Navy, followed by a long career in the shoe industry. They went on to have 2 more children after Carl, Normie, and my mom, Nancy. They had a big friend group that they were always getting together with, whether it was playing cards, dancing, or just spending time together over meals. My grandmother loved feeding people. She became an amazing cook after originally not knowing what she was doing. They lived on the Mattapan-Dorchester line until moving to Brookline in the mid-1950s and then to Jamaica Plain for their final 20 years. We had so many amazing family memories together. Adam's now going to tell you about how this book's author helped us learn more, leading to one of our favorite family memories at the State House.
Thank you. In around 2005, 2006, an author named Hal LaCroix did this book. And I'm just going to read a portion of the inside cover. Hy was one of 19 POWs featured in this book. The book, Journey Out of Darkness, which we credit for so much of what's in today's presentation, including the title of today's presentation, is a collection of portraits in the words and photographs of 19 former prisoners of war who bravely endured captivity in Nazi Germany during World War II. Through these men, one can learn essential truths about the POW experience during that war, truths that counter many popular myths and misconceptions. The 19 men featured here gather every week in the offices of the Veterans Administration in Boston and Brockton, Mass, to talk about their experiences and find comfort in each other. In their 80s and 90s, they are unique individuals with unique wartime experiences, but also representative of the more than 120,000 American POWs held in Nazi Germany. They are the men who fought a double war, in combat and then as POWs. Together, their photos and their stories go beyond typical first-person accounts. As Nicole mentioned, until the men in this book began meeting in the VA support groups, few had ever spoken of their POW experiences. These portraits also illuminate another little-known story, the plight of the Jewish American POWs. 2 of the men featured in this book, one of them Hy Fine, of course, were Jews who concealed their religious identities from the SS. This book led me to learn something. we started talking to Hy and Eve about their experience. And we learned that there were 4 medals that he earned during his time in the military, but he never received 2 of them. 2 he got in the 40s, but there were 2 that, for whatever reason, they described as a clerical reason, he was awarded them on paper, but he never got the actual medals. So at the time, I worked for Governor Deval Patrick and Lieutenant Governor Tim Murray, and I sent an email. Charlene Queenan was an all-star state employee of the Department of Veteran Services. She worked with the VA and the National Personnel Records Center to check the records and determined that Hy Fine was eligible to be awarded the Prisoner of War Medal, the Air Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, and the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal. It was the World War II Victory Medal and the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal that were not awarded in the 1940s. And so the governor made this right and awarded them in a really amazing ceremony at the State House in 2010. Hy, at the time, told the Boston Herald, quote, "I feel overwhelmed. After the war ended, all I wanted to do was get home to my wife and my kid. So medals I didn't need." I told Governor Patrick about tonight's event, and he sent me this message.
I remember when Adam and Nicole brought Hy and Eve Fine into the governor's office when I was in office to visit with the Lieutenant Governor, Tim Murray, and me. And what an honor it was to be able to present him with the medals he had earned so many decades before. It was so much more than a formality. It was a recognition of a living example of service and sacrifice. And his presence alone, let alone his stories, brought back vividly a time in our history and in the history of this republic where patriotism really counted for something, where it really showed up in tangible ways. And I hope and expect that the memories of both Hy and Eve are a blessing to his family. They certainly are to me.
We're just going to finish with just a few little clips from when we were interviewing them that just made us laugh a little bit. So they're just little tidbits that we wanted to share.
It's January 31st, 1910. Oh, 2010.
No.
That's all right.
We're not doing that.
2010.
While we were there,
Greenland.
let me get to it.
Okay.
Well, I swept her off her feet. Then I went into the service.
Didn't you have an opportunity to buy? Didn't Zadie also have an opportunity to buy land in Framingham?
Oh, we could have owned half of
And
Framingham.
they could own that. Don't fence me. Remember that song? You and yeah.
Give me room. That's a room.
Imagine if we owned half of Framingham. We'd be rich.
All right, Nicole, well done. So thank you, Nicole. Thank you to everyone on the screen, to Ellie, the LIZKOR committee members, to the rabbi, the cantor, Ellen in the front office, to Bill, technical director, Howie on the camera, to former Governor Patrick, to Colonel Enriquez I'm about to introduce, and to Kevin Rusnak, the chief historian of the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center, and so many others. But we really wanted to give a shout out to them to help make tonight possible. And as I mentioned, Colonel Enriquez is here, and I'd love to call her up to the podium to say a few words as the commander of Hanscom Air Force Base, the only active duty Air Force base in all of New England. Not only does she have a role supporting the acquisition and the contracting for all the technology that help make the aircraft fly and communicate, but Hanscom Air Force Base supports the service members and their families for medical and everything you can think of when to thank them for their service. And so she's an important role to support veterans and their families, and I want to welcome here tonight. Thank you, Colonel.
So I need to echo the thank yous. And Adam didn't quite say it, but he is my right hand. He plays this off. I think you know what a brilliant man he is. I know she does. Nicole does. But I have the privilege of working with him on a daily basis. I sometimes refer to him as my wooby because I wouldn't sure where I'd be without him. He's that important to what we do. until tonight, I never understood the significance of your family service. And that's the part I kind of want to hit on. So Adam described it perfectly, that my responsibility is for our veterans and our active duty, but most importantly, our families. There isn't a single one of us who serves that doesn't serve without our family. And by the way, our families didn't raise their hand. And I'm really proud of that. My husband, Rick, I had the privilege, we both served in the military together. So he was my first salute, commissioned me, promoted me to first lieutenant, and then he got out and I stayed in. But we have 4 kids and 2 grandkids. And I could only hope, Nicole, that one day that my grandkids or my kids would love to tell my story, even though it is not that good. But the love and respect and the influence and the true impact that it's had on your life and your kids' lives and your parents, it goes without saying, and you can feel it. You can see the bravery, you can see the humbleness, but you can see the pride that you have in him. So thank you for inviting us to share that with you. I do have to say, we do have some similarities. And I think Ellie was saying the ripple effect of service, and what we feel, right? And so as we look at Lieutenant Fine, and what he did and the impact for his family of years to come. And that continues, and that will always continue. PTSD, we touched on a little bit. I liked that he's only short a little bit of the time, and I could see Eve's face. It was a little more than little, a little bit of the time, 1% of the time. I think it might have been maybe 2 or 3%. But all jokingly, we didn't. Our veterans did not come home with services. They did not come home with support. They were welcomed home and known as the greatest generation, but we never understood what that was. We never understood it. And unfortunately, we went on and we had several more wars, in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and our veterans came home, and they weren't known as the greatest generation, and they weren't received with open arms, and we still didn't know. Today we know. Today we absolutely know, and we know, and I can't believe how high. Even then, 10 years ago, 67 years after being married, when he gave this video, I think that's what it was. In his age, he knew that it was impossible for the services to recognize and help because there was too many, right? That's pretty profound, especially in that time to know. I'd like to say we're standing on the shoulders of High in his service, and we learned. Because today we do now have the services. Do we have enough? No. Do we have it exactly right? No. But we're a lot better off than when we were. And I do find pride in that. So are any of your uncles, so the two sons and 1 daughter, are the sons here? They're on Zoom. Okay. So I want to say thank you for your service. I know your mom has passed on April, will now be a year. But for the sons that are here, the joy that you can see in your parents' face talking about the 3 of you, right? And that love, I can emulate that and I feel it. And it's almost so, it's ironic in that the one thing that you don't want the families to know is that you're struggling, but the one thing that keeps you going is that family, right? And so that protective that Eve gave to protect the family and protect her in-laws and protect all she could, that's a heavy burden. And she did it, you can tell, with class. And the love you could feel. But for the children who lived this, I'm very confident that they saw a lot more than what Eve or High ever thought they did. And they loved him for it, and they accepted him for it. And so I just want to tell you, thank you for your service. You never raised your hand for your father to serve, and really your mother. And I don't think our children hear that enough. So thank you. I do want to close this up with one other little part. So, I find it ironic that your grandfather was in the 8th Air Force. So my husband's grandfather was in the 8th Air Force. He was in the 457th Bomb Group, and he was a belly gunner. And he has a similar story in that, but he never shared it. And he's left us in his time, and we got little bits and pieces, but we have reunions. We've gone to 2 reunions now with the 457th Bomb Group, and we as family members get to share that story. So I am not sure if his group has a reunion, but I will tell you 8th Air Force does. And they would love to see any parts of this. They meet annually. And Barksdale, Arizona is where 8th Air Force was. And we had this last one, the 8th Air Force just had the reunion in DC. But I encourage, if you want to know or you have family members that served in World War II, these units are still together, and the families are bonding together with stories and artifacts, and it's a really welcoming place to be. We absolutely loved it, and we actually hosted them actually in DC, and they brought a light to our life and hearts that we didn't even know that we could have. So thank you for this time. Thank you all for even just being here to listen and to carry on the story. I look forward to looking at everything, and you did a great job.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And again, thank you. It was a very nice surprise yesterday when we learned that the Air Force historian was asked by the Colonel's office to look up High Fine, and we learned a whole lot of new information that we were able to add. And today, including that picture of the airplane, that was the first time we'd ever seen the actual airplane that was shot down. So thank you again for all for that and for being here tonight. And with that, there's time for some questions.
Thank you so much. This was very informative. It was a wonderful story. I should just say that a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, my wife Susan and I were in Savannah wintering, and we became aware of a wonderful museum right outside of Savannah. It's in Pooler, and it's called the Mighty Eighth Museum. It is a wonderful, wonderful place. They have a B-17 that you can actually, they've reconstructed it. It's so I would encourage anybody who's interested. Oh, they also have a great historian, a library. There's tons of information there about the Mighty Eighth Air Force. And when you mentioned the 492nd, I immediately went to my phone and I saw, yeah, they were part of the Mighty Eighth. They were in London during that, that 1944, 1945. So yeah, I encourage people to go there. Susan has had an uncle who was part of the Mighty Eighth. We went down to the museum. We went into the library. We researched him. It's just so I encourage people to maybe do that if they would like to find out more information about their relatives who were in that part of the campaign.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. My kids are looking at me, and I think they're wondering if our next RV trip will go there.
Okay.
As I said to you before, I think tonight, I knew your grandfather growing up in the ship. So it's didn't realize this. Unreal. Hell of a guy.
Thank you, Bill. That's lovely.
Thank you so much for sharing your family story. I have a two-part question. The first was he mentioned that he started telling his story in the 80s and the veterans group. I just wondered if he had shared what led to that, like a chicken or egg, if you knew how was it at that time, or was there some world events going on, or just a VA doctor who suggested, so if you knew that. And the other question was about, similar to the reunions, did he stay in touch with anybody who was able to stay in touch with anyone who had been a POW with him or had been in the plane that was shot down? Thank you.
We don't have every single fact, but we do know from other parts of the video that it really wasn't until the 80s when a group got organized. He was living in the Boston area, later on Jamaica Plain, and whether it was the West Roxbury VA or another local VA in the Boston area, there was a support group that he just got drawn into. And as Nicole said, they had some sympathetic feelings for one another. They had some support from that group, but it did take him, 35 plus years to start being comfortable to get back out there. And he did talk about as well some of the colleagues that he served with, staying in touch over the years. Some very, very, infrequent, but others as well.
Thank you so much for this. This was remarkable. And I don't have a question, I just have a comment, an observation. And it's so interesting how composed your grandparents were discussing the trauma that they both suffered, well, individually and collectively for decades. I mean, I'm crying and I wasn't even there. But that's just what just struck me was how composed they were and so loving. So thank you so much.
found interesting the fact that he never denied being a Jew. He just never told anybody. And that really resonated with me. I thought that was great. And the fact that he didn't say he was, I bet bothered him a little bit. But he never denied his heritage, and I think that says something about the man. I was happy for that and proud of him.
Thank you for all the hard work and putting the presentation together. It really just educates us. Perhaps I missed it, but my question is, what sustained him while he was in captivity, particularly when he got pneumonia and so many people would have just kind of given up? What sustained him?
I would say probably knowing that he had a baby at home that he had never met. And that was, he kept saying, I had a wife and kid to get home to. I think that was probably, because he would, go through all of his sicknesses and everything because he just wanted to make it home. So I think that's it.
On Zoom, in the room, you can see the upper left corner. That is baby Carl.
Oh, there's baby Carl.
He's here
in the
watching.
Hi, baby Carl.
So he talked about the baby. He also pretty much said it was all about survival. He just wanted to survive. He did whatever it took. They dragged him to roll call when he had pneumonia so he could not get in trouble and just right back to bed. But it was all about survival.
And along when he was talking about when he wasn't talking about being Jewish, and he said, I don't know why they were too proud. They wanted to say that they were Jewish. But he's like, I just wanted to survive, so I wasn't going with them. I'm doing my own thing. So I think that.
On Apple TV, if you have it, there's a program, it's a 9-series regarding the 8th Air Force.
Thank you, Bill.
Masters of the Sky. Someone actually at work told me about that yesterday. Thank you for that. Apple TV, Masters of the Sky. I'll check it out.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing your family's legacy to pass along. My question is probably a silly one, but your grandmother talked about the letters that she received. Do you still have them?
They're right here.
They are. So I'm sure.
Oh, the letters.
The letters.
Not
the telegrams, the letters.
So their house was broken into many, many, many years ago. And after that break-in, one of the things that they noticed was gone were those letters. Of all the random things, right? I know. And so, no, they sadly don't have the letters, which is very sad because I would have loved to have those letters. Yeah.
But I would suggest that you take a look at some of the artifacts that they've brought to share with us. It's not unusual that people who have had the experience of the Shoah in whatever way have all kinds of things, how they got them, how they kept them, who knows. And so you should really take a look if you have a chance, not all at one time, of course, but it's quite extraordinary. 4 telegrams. He's shot down. He's a prisoner of war. What's the third one, Adam? Shot down, prisoner of war.
Back in the captivity of the Americans, so the Americans have rescued him, and then the 4th one was he's coming home. What we have, you'll see the medals from the State House, the 4 telegrams, his discharge papers that recaps his career, a citation from the former governor back in the 50s, the pictures, his prisoner of war identification card, and then the abridged prayer book for Jews in the armed forces of the United States that he had with him earlier, but not when he did not have this to hide with his dog tags.
It's a rare experience to see this. It's also a rare experience. LIZKOR is all about educating and letting the next generation and the next generation see these things and hear the stories. So it's extraordinary, the things that you brought us, and you did a great job. To Nicole and to Adam, thank you so much. We're delighted to have you here.